Man versus elephant. Okay. Lola, let me start do you regret that day when you sent the email to me?
Not yet, but...
Okay, just so you know, let me introduce. Lola is a Spanish journalist. She used to freelance for some very important Spanish media. And a couple years ago, when Outriders was looking for a correspondent in China, I got an email from Lola saying, hey, I'm in China, I'm a reporter, I can help you out. And that was more or less, I think, 3 years ago. 3 years ago, yes? And that's how our journey started, and now we are here together in Żerardów. But between China and Żerardów, there happened also Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And many projects. Now, Lola also is one of the few non-Polish people nominated for the Grand Press Award, which is for the story Vaccines and Fake News. Funny speaking, it was a story about vaccines before vaccines were a mainstream topic right now. So for that story, but Lola also authored many of our crazy projects. If you don't have enough of COVID, we have a COVID game on our website called Testris. But there are also 2 other projects which relate strictly to Sri Lanka. Now, what is also very important, we may touch it. We will also have, not exactly as part of the festival, but tomorrow at 8 p.m. we are releasing the 377 movie, which also actually happens around Sri Lanka. So a lot of Sri Lanka. And now, before we will jump into the elephant story, Lola also created a different interactive story called Suicide Belts in Paradise.
Yeah, so, well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I arrived in Sri Lanka in 2019 because it was the moment that it marked the 10th anniversary of the Civil War. For those who don't know the Civil War in Sri Lanka, for 26 years, they were fighting the soldiers from the government with the guerrilla called Tamil Tigers. And it was a very sophisticated guerrilla. They committed a lot of suicide attacks, like 126 in 2 decades.
One thing you have to know about Lola, she has all the data. So,
And Sri Lanka is a very special country. For those who didn't visit it, it's an island in the south of India. And they have a very particular story because it's a mosaic of people. The majority of the population, they are Buddhists and they are Sinhalese, but later there are very important minorities. There are Tamils, and there are also an important population of Muslim people, because it was an island that was in the middle of the commercial trade for centuries. So many people make business with this island at that moment. It was occupied for Europeans for 400 years. And it's also how all these relations were created for 40 years. So I arrived in 2019 to cover the anniversary of the war. And
hold on. Anybody was to Sri Lanka? People.
It's amazing, right?
Okay, because we were just thinking before this panel with Lola, like what you may know about Sri Lanka. Just before we jump into detail, like, is there anything you know besides on holidays? Do you remember about any maybe news event from last couple years? Okay.
Yeah, Sri Lanka, beside of the amazing beach that they have, it's also known as, unfortunately, because of the tsunami and because the terrorist attack that it happened in 2019. Because it was something that I arrived to Sri Lanka, and like some days later, there was this terrorist attack. So
it's called the Easter.
The Easter attack, because
Easter
it was
attack.
during the celebration, a mass celebration. And it's a beautiful island with sad and sweet history.
So yes, so probably you also remember, because that was actually a big news in many mainstream media, the Easter attack. But before that, just to say that, you know, Sri Lanka, first of all, regained independence in 1948.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Whew, okay, because there is a lot of dates to remember here. And as Lola was saying, even though it's a small island, it's actually, there's a lot of people living.
Yeah, there are 21 million people, and we are talking about an island that is like half Greece, so it's small, but especially the population growth in the last years. If we think about it, in 1950, when it gained independence, there were 8 million people living there, and now there are 21 million. And so the government had to balance the growth, the development of the country, but also all the challenges between minorities, because something important in Sri Lanka, even the majority is the Buddhist and Sinhalese group, that they are like 70%. During the British rule, the Tamil population had the better position in the government, because during the British rule, the official language was English. So thus, who spoke better English got better positions. When they gained the independence, the Sinhalese population said, okay, now it's our turn. We are going to make Sinhalese the official language. And the language, it was one of the factors for the tension that later became in a war. Because there were many people. Another interesting thing is Sri Lanka at that moment, the moment of the independence, they managed to control very well the malaria cases that there were, and there was the leader at that moment that controlled malaria. This is a good news, but they made that the population grows a lot. And there were suddenly many educated people fighting for positions. So all these ingredients became in a war.
Okay, so we know a little bit about the history, we know what it is, we know about the minorities. Before we jump into stories, because, correct me if I'm wrong, you were working on the suicide belt story while the Easter attack happened, yes?
Yeah, it was a terrible coincidence, because the plan was to go to Sri Lanka to cover the 10th anniversary of the civil war. But I started to work on it 2 days after a terrorist attack. So it was very difficult to move in the north of the island, because it's not a...
You were going to...
Jaffna.
Jaffna?
So it's not a... The north is where, for 26 years, the war happened. So even it's a touristic island, not all the tourists visit Jaffna. So it was very weird that suddenly a foreign person is visiting all the places where there were attacks in the past. So there were some weird situations during that moment.
And it was there any, for how long you weren't able to travel around the island after the attack? Was there any blockade or no?
No, just there was a curfew, but it's an island that is very, when there is a problem, since there were so many years of terrorist attack, they suddenly set up a curfew at, I don't remember the time right now, maybe at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. But in the morning I could travel around.
Okay, so for those who have been or will be in Sri Lanka, one of the tourist activities is to go to either national parks, but there's also some elephant orphanages. But this is just one side of the elephant story. The other side of the story we would like to tell you. Now, Łukasz, you're there? Okay, now hold on with the movie. Lola, we have to stand up and stand here. We're going to show you a 60-second movie, which will take you into the story about which we want to talk, okay? Możesz puścić film.
But also contributing to this is the fact that for more than 70 years, elephant conservation has been focused on trying to put all the elephants inside protected areas.
And so you place a temptation right in the middle of elephant habitat, and what do you expect the animal to do?
Kilowatts. It's approximately 106 people, and we had about 378 elephants dying. They put into a pumpkin, and the elephant takes it and goes and eats it, and it blows up his mouth. So it's a very painful death.
About 2 years ago, the house was broken into.
3 o'clock in the morning. She says the elephants come from the jungle and they've broken their branches. And slashes at night, at all time.
Well, it's no longer coming soon. It's already published, but it was made. It was made just to promote it. Okay, so here is the thing. Usually, when Sri Lanka also became, I think, popular in Poland as a simply touristic destination, and of course before pandemic times, there were even charter flights going there, and it's a very popular spot for people who are surfing, especially the south side, like Gaye and Mirisa and those places, and then you go to Yala National Park or you go into the center, like Kandy or up north, you have Anuradhapura, Polonnaruwa, and then Jaffna. Jaffna is not that popular, I would say, touristic, but because people were always still a little bit afraid to go there, but there are usually those spots which you go. And then, as I said, there are, of course, elephant orphanages, which are, I think people treat them a little bit like zoos. You know, you just go and there is a lot of elephants and you're like, oh, wow. But also those elephants are in those orphanages because, for example, especially after the Civil War, they lost, for example, a leg because they went on a mine which exploded. Those orphanages are used in most cases for medical reasons and so on and so on. But Lola, you were interested in a different story, which, first of all, how did you find this topic?
Well, it was a coincidence because I attended to the press conference and they were talking about the big issue that is elephants. And for us, maybe it's not a conservative topic, but there is it's an important topic because it's the country with the deadliest toll in the human-elephant conflict. There are 400 elephants that are killed every day. To think about this number, think in another country that has elephants, that is India, and India is a very populated country. They have the population 60 times more than Sri Lanka, and people kill 100 elephants every year. So we are talking that this small island has a very big problem. And this problem happens for many reasons, but one of these reasons is because it's very populated by people and by elephants. So they need to share territory. It wasn't a problem at the beginning, but now there are many people moving to the areas that used to be inhabited by elephants because they want to cultivate grass, they want to cultivate rice, and they moved to the elephant territory. And all the attacks happen, especially for food. Because elephants, as you know, they are very big animals, and they eat a lot. They eat during 16 or 18 hours every day, and they eat a lot of grass, 100 kilograms every day. 70 people eat every day. So imagine all these
That's
elephants.
like all of us here, basically.
All of us eating every day. So they need to find the food. And since elephants love grass, and you have all these people cultivating rice, that is something very good for elephants, they find the perfect dish. And this is where the problem starts.